So I'm creating new project. And remember that when we created a Java project, we created just new project and selected Java. Later, we will use Angular CLI to create front end using Angular. But when we create back end using SpringBoot, we select Spring Initializer. Spring Initializer. And next, we need to give it a name. And since it will tell hello your name, so it's a HelloUser name. HelloUser. We select the folder where it wants to go, and it will create, you see, it will create the name as a project folder for HelloUser. Next, I want to have a Git repository, and I will commit every small achievement, so we will proceed step by step. I select Java because the entire course for server end is in Java. Now we have other options available. As you see that Spring Boot projects can be done entirely in Kotlin and in Groovy, but it is easier to find information about Spring Boot in Java, so it's the most common. Also, a huge part of this course is to learn Java. So for this reason, we do it in Java. Next step, type of the build system. You can build it using Maven or Gradle, and when we use Gradle, there are two options to provide instruction files, either in Groovy or in Kotlin. Most of the information comes in textbooks, and in tutorials comes for this. So technically, there are two approaches, either using Maven or this, because this is hard to find information. For Android, this is a primary choice, but not for this given system, Spring Boot. When you use Maven instruction, you will use XML to provide instructions. When you use Gradle Groovy, you use Groovy language to provide instructions, but it's not a big deal because most of it is just copy-paste. You don't need to learn Groovy language in order to provide these instructions. Next, you type group name. I use it C80 Servak, it's domain name. When you do your, I don't have websites there, it's just domain. When you do your assignment, I will ask you to type Sheridan.your login name to make it reasonably unique. Next, artifact, it is automatically copied name. Package name, as you see, this time it adds artifact in small letters to package name. Do not change it, keep it as it is. Next, it's extremely important to keep 17 because current version of Spring Boot will not work with any other version except 17. So keep it 17. Also keep it 17. There are two options. We stick to jar. There are differences. Jar stands for Java Archive, and this is like release of what it will create in the end. When it will create jar, it will combine server and your code together. So it will be like runnable piece. So you can run it from command line. WAR stands for Web Archive. If you choose WAR, you cannot run it by clicking button run easily. You need to have a server separately, and WAR file will create just archive of your project. You will need to link your project to server in order to run it. So it is extra work, so this is why I'm not doing it. Creating WAR archives helps you to run several applications on the same server, but it is a slightly older approach. The technology goes into using jar. The reason is that jars are easier to host on clouds, so this is primary choice for now. So again, name, location, Git, Java, Gradle Groovy, group, artifact, package name, 17 important, 17, and jar. Then I click next. Now, since it's a simple project, we don't need to select a lot. For this project, I don't select anything from developer tools. There is one tool that I will mention, but I will not select it. You already learned that Java is a quite verbose language. In order to achieve what you want, you need to type a lot. Lombok is a project that designed it to make it slightly more compact. What does it do? It generates some code at compile time. I'm not using it because, in my opinion, it is extra confusion because some code is added at compile time. You don't see it, but you assume that it will be added. It's the same kind of code that you can easily generate using IDE, like setters, getters, constructors, and so on. So for this reason, I don't think it's even good choice. But some textbooks and some programmers use it religiously in every project. So we will have it in some examples to see how it works. But in my opinion, yeah, it's just opinionated opinion. It is probably just mostly useless. It was useful before Kotlin existed. Now we have Kotlin is more compacted Java, compact Java essentially. So far more compact Java than Java, so there is no need to it. If you want to have compact code, just learn Kotlin and use it with Kotlin. So in web, I select Spring Web for obvious reasons. It's web project. When we select other things, Spring Web may be included at the same time with other pieces. So we will see. Right? In some choices, when you select other options, this is included automatically. In this case, it is just Spring Web. In template engine, what is template? It's some way to describe a layout. This is template. I'm using TimeLeaf, and I will use only TimeLeaf in this course. Our textbook has chapter using templates, using Mustache. And textbook author doesn't explain this in details. It is just short example with a little piece inserted. Why? I don't know. It's another choice. The most rich in features option is TimeLeaf. And it's also most common. There are video tutorials on Lynda or LinkedIn Learning that teach you how to use SpringBoot with TimeLeaf. I will provide links to it. So you can check, do with tutorials as well if you want. So far I selected Spring Web TimeLeaf, and you see it is adding stuff to the list. And one more option that I want to add, because this option will, this project will also validate your input. So if you miss, it will tell you first name is missing, or last name is missing. So I will use framework for validation inputs, and this is from validation, this one. Okay. So for this project, I selected Spring Web, TimeLeaf, and validation. Okay. And for your assignment, you also do that. And create. And after this, just wait till it creates project. Right. It's already initialized at Git. As you see, it shows in green. It means these files are known to Git. But no, Git didn't commit anything yet. In Angular project, it commits first commit right away. But in this case, it doesn't. Files that's supposed to be ignored, they're already mentioned in .git ignore files. So when we commit, it's safe to select everything and commit. Okay. So what does it generate? It generated only one file, HelloUser application, which is public static main. So this is starting point of your app. We don't need to edit it most of the time, because starting point is not like regular Java project where you actually add some stuff there that calls your code. So what happens here? Spring application run and name of the class will scan package of this class for objects that you create. Some objects will be marked with annotations like this. And it will plug these objects right way, hopefully, to make it work. Okay? So typically, we don't add stuff to it, although it's all right to add things to it, but typically we don't do it. We get other objects here and mark some of them with annotations to connect the stuff together. So this is the approach. Right. So annotations are important because Spring Boot is using annotations to connect pieces. So please make sure that you know where it's supposed to be annotations and pay attention to it so you don't miss it. Otherwise, it cannot plug it together, so it won't work. Okay. So what goes into resources? There is a static folder. Static folder will contain files that will be sent directly to browser as it is. Like, for example, CSS files, JavaScript files. So those files that go as it is. Templates will contain templates. It's layouts with places to insert data, marketplaces to insert data. Java code goes here in Java folder. But your Java code, please be careful, should be in this package or any sub-package of it. If you put it outside of the given package, it will not work by default. It will not. Because remember what I said. When project starts, it will scan package to find your stuff. If you put outside any Java code outside of this package, it will not find it by default. So your code will not work outside if you put it outside of this package. Okay? Clear, hopefully. It's a typical mistake in assignments and exams. Students just put code outside and this code is not found, so it doesn't work. All right, so this is kind of important, application properties. This is configuration for your project. In simple project, we will add some configuration, and first thing that we'll add, it's optional because it's default one. It is port. You start typing port and it says port. 8080, it is default port, so you don't need to do it. It is extra information. If your laptop is already running something on port 8080, you cannot start your app because only one server can run on a specific port. So if for some reason your laptop is running another server on port 8080, you need to change it to another port, like 8081, for example. So we will add one more line of configuration today. Here. Next, let's add something like template. I will add template output. I will use template engine timeleaf, and for this reason, I will use HTML template because it is close to HTML. Other template engines don't necessarily use stuff close to HTML. So I select HTML file and I call it output. I'll be careful about case sensitivity. Stick to some naming convention. For example, all templates starts with capital and camel case, and stick to it. This way you don't have to remember. Because web projects are case sensitive. Even worse, it may work on your laptop, you upload it to a real server, it will stop working. Why? Because Windows and Macs, they're relaxed about case sensitivity, right? So it may find if it is misnamed. But Linux is not. Linux is very hard on case sensitivity. So for web projects, it's typical that they fail when you go from Windows to Linux for real life, because you were not careful about cases. Okay, so for my own say convention, I'm sticking to templates starting with capital and camel case. This is how I do it. For Java, we don't have an option because Java has strict naming convention. Name of the file is name of the class inside. There's no option. Name of the public class inside. It has to start with capital and camel case. For all other files, I'm using small letters, and if it is more than one word, I separate them with minus sign. All my web addresses are in small letters, and if it is more than one word, I separate it with minus sign. So I'm sticking to naming convention of Sheridan website, Sheridan College. You see, when we go somewhere, you see, right? If we go to another place, small letters, words, but with minus sign in between. So I'm sticking to this naming convention. So all my addresses are in small letters, and if I use minus sign in it. Why? Because it's harder to make mistake if you stick to some convention, right? You don't have to remember where it's capital, where it's not. So this is my approach about names. Except templates, I use camel case, starting with capital. So this is output, and let's give a title, some output. Okay. So far, it is just HTML. It's not a template. It will be used as a template when we mark places to insert data, right? But now it is just template. So I create just HTML. So I create header tag. Header tag doesn't have special meaning unless you attach CSS to it, formatting to it. And I put h1 in it, say output. Output. So when it shows up, I have something on the screen, so I know that it's showing template. Okay. Next, this will not show on the screen because, first of all, it's hidden inside of templates. If you add in static folder index HTML starting with small letter index, it will show as default page. But it's a bad idea, so don't do it. Why it is a bad idea? The reason is that even default page will probably have some dynamic content. And if it is static, you cannot insert anything from the server. So even if you create something here, even for default page, put it here. So how to show content? We need to create, unless it is index HTML and static, don't do it. We need to create a controller. Controller is decision maker of what's, decision hub, not maker, decision hub, which templates to show and what data to attach to template. So this is primary focus of controller. Input of the controller, user input, whatever user type on input form, and address, web address. Okay? So let's create controller. We can create additional package to put controller in it or put it outside. But bottom line, it must be inside, all Java code must be inside of this. So I create additional package to show that we can do it, and I call it controller. Your program can have more than one controller, and it's fine. I use more controllers when you need to separate concerns. If part of the code is about users, part of the code about products that your website is selling, it makes sense to separate them in separate controllers. So use separation of controls, separation of concerns to separate code between controllers. Controller. Let's create controller. Controller is Java class. Name is not important, but naming convention to add word controller to end of it, so you know it's controller. So I say hello user controller. Adding word controller to the name of the class does not make it controller. It is just part of the name that you want to use. Okay? What makes it controller? Add to Git. What makes it the controller is to add controller on top. This is super critically important. Okay? Because this controller will be plugged in right place by Spring Framework. If you don't write controller on it, it will not know that it's control, it will not plug it in right place. So it will be error. for error, nothing found, okay? So, next, input of the controller, user input, or if there's no input, it is just request carrying address, web address. So what is inside of the controller? Methods associated with addresses. You can also have methods that is not associated with addresses, call it by other methods if you want. So let's create a method. Since it's output, let's call it output. So let's make it public. It will, even if you make it private, it will still work. Surprisingly, because SpringBoot is using reflection to access methods. But let's, to avoid any confusion, let's make it public and stick to public. Public. What is the return type of this method? In easiest scenario, it is string. So let's do use string, and I will explain what it is. Output. Okay? Output. What is this one? If return type is a string, it's the name of the template that I want to show. So again, if return type is string, it is name of the template that I want to show. Output. All right? If I leave it as it is, it will not work because this method is not associated with any web address, so it will not be called. So I need to associate some local address with this method. So I want to use associated with default address like root folder. So in order to link methods to web address, it's called mapping. When request is sent, it is specific type. Get type, post type, delete type. I use default one, get. Get request is sent when we type address in the address line of a browser, click on link, or submit data default way. So default method for request on web is called get. So in order to associate get request with this method that will be called when a request is received, I use get mapping. Get mapping. And I tell in parentheses, I type slash. Slash it is root. So it will be localhost 8080, location root. Okay. So after this, given method will be called when we go to the server root address. Okay. So let's see how it works. So I click run, and it is starting server. These are log messages. You see info, 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 and log messages are associated with specific classes, right? As you see. And last log, it says started on port 8080. So how to access it? You type localhost column 8080, column 8080, and press enter, and you see your output. All right. So what did we do? We definitely achieved something. We made the controller work, right? So let's commit it. When you commit, it saves to select everything, because what is supposed to be ignored is already ignored. Yes?
Sorry, for the get mapping, how did you get the globe, or like a little...
What? I type it add get mapping, parentheses. This is a clue. It's not, I didn't type it. Yeah. IntelliJ's give you some icons, some comments. It's not my code. My code is only this piece. Okay. It just says it's web address, essentially. Okay. So I selected everything, and I need to give it a message like, made the controller work, right? I made the controller work. Okay. And I click commit, and now I see I made the controller work my commit in Git. Are you with me? Next, let's go back to my output HTML, this one. When you design page, you may want to preview what you are typing, or to see what is going on, right? So there are ways to preview it. One way to do it is to run server and see it there. Unfortunately, it will never update it, even if you click reload, if you change this. You will have to stop server and start server. Okay? If you want to see change in your HTML, you need to start server, stop and start again. So working on pure HTML this way is not a great idea because you have to restart server each time and reload the page. There are better options. You click on this part, and it will give you preview here. This will be refreshed when you save page. But it will not restart the server, and you will not see our change here. All right. So this, to be clear, this option is not running your Java code at all. So this is how to work on appearance. You can preview HTML either here, or you can preview HTML by running this one. But this is not the same as running Java server. It just started internal server inside of IDE. Okay. Okay. Next, in order to make page pretty, we use CSS. Right? So let's learn how to link CSS. And there is a trick about linking CSS to template. It's not the same as regular page. So let's add CSS. I add folder to static directory, and I call it CSS to keep it organized because technically we can have more than one. So I added folder CSS, and I add a new. I select CSS file, this style sheet, and I call it main. Main. I press enter, and it created main CSS, and I add it to Git. Okay. So let's add several things to CSS, like colors. Right? So I want to add H1 to see that CSS is working. In some color, like for example, let's make it green. I will also create H2. And in some other color, maybe violet. Let's do blue-violet. And I will also create class inside of span. So span and class. So this will be specific span, and I call it server. So this is class, CSS class named server, specifically for some span tag. And I define its color, yeah, pink, why not? Okay. So this is tag, and this is class for specific tag, right? It's a refresher of your CSS. And if I don't specify tag, just start to, it will be class applied to everything, any tag, right? So this would be, I will call it arrow, and I make it in red, because I will also display arrows. So color, and I make it like dark red. Okay? So it is quick refresh of CSS. If it is dot after tag, it will apply only to this specific tag with this class. And this is for any tag with class arrow. Okay? So let's link it to my template. Going to output and link this one. So it is link. Okay. What kind of relation, style sheet, right? And href. So going from this template down into main CSS, right? So stepping out of template folder, stepping in into static folder, stepping in into CSS folder, right? And main CSS. Okay? Okay, so you see, it is here, so as I'm stepping out of templates and stepping into that to reach it. Okay? Hopefully it will work. Let's see. I preview it, it did work. This will be refreshed when I click save each time on save. But this will not be refreshed unless I restart server. But when I restart server, you will realize that it still doesn't work. So let's see how it doesn't work. So I stop it and I run it. It will restart it. So let's wait till it restarts. It did restart, so reload fails. Why? Control-Shift-I to open inspection and say failed to load main CSS. So it didn't find it. Issue is that this folder doesn't exist for the browser from browser point of view, this folder. So we need to provide two addresses. One for the case when server is running, okay? And one for the case when you want to open HTSS. So now we have to deal with HTML as template, actually. Okay, so let's start with it. First, we need to define namespace for the template engine. XML-NS stands for XML namespace. Column name of this, TH, assignment, and I select and I write www timeleaf.org, I believe. I don't know. I will look up. Okay. Check out. Org. So I was right. Org. So I added namespace, and now I want to use it. So if I provide instruction href without instruction starting with th, like this will apply to both scenarios, to browser and to template engine, directly from to browser here and to template engine. If I provide both, template engine will take this one. So this will be href instruction for template engine. Addresses on template side for template engine are enclosed in curly braces. And it is safer to start address with slash. This way it will be relative to root of the servers. This way you don't have to count how many dots to put in front of dash or something. How many dots, dot, dash, okay? So remember that this one doesn't exist. And this is root. CSS will appear like in the root of the server. So this will be CSS main.css. Okay. Attribute not allowed here. Why it's not allowed here? XML namespace. Ignore it for now, okay? Ignore it for now. Let's run it and see what it says, okay? Run. It did work. So why it is complaining? Let me check out. What is the issue? It is missing HTTP in front of it. So let's put HTTP. Okay, this is why it's unclear. Now it is validating. So I missed HTTP in front of www timeleaf. Okay. Now it is fine. It did work, but it did not validate. Okay. And now I got it working here. Next, let's learn a little bit more about instructions for time leave. So this is my header. I will also put footer and some information there. Footer, and in footer I put paragraph and I say running on HTML server. Now I want this word to be replaced when I run Java server. Okay. How to replace item on the screen? You need to put it inside of some tag. So I will put span tag around HTML. This way I can replace it afterwards. Then I use th instruction to replace content. It is texted. Th text will replace content of the text content of this tag. So if I say Java, when this template is processed on Java side, it will pick Java and replace HTML. Okay? But if template is not processed, it will stay HTML. Okay? Now let's make it pink. Remember I defined class. A class server, right? This would make it pink. In my CSS, I defined class server inside of span to turn it pink. So let's see. I will save it. Save all. You see it shows running on HTML server. This is just preview of HTML. It's not processed. In order to see it processed, you stop it, run it, and reload after it restarts. Okay. Now you see running on Java server. Okay. This is not processed, this is processed. So what did we learn? Th text is replacing text content of the given tag. Instead of writing words statically, you can insert variables there. With special annotation, we will do it. Okay? Questions? Yes?
It's not sure if you, or like the HTML on the ID that page is
You need to define span.server color deep pink. Did you do that?
Yes.
And I added class server. Okay, so I'm referring to CSS class here. Okay, that makes it pink. Okay, so this is processed, this is not processed. Okay, so let's keep applying this logic. Inside of, I have header and have footer, and I put it inside of a main. I will create also main section. In the main section, I will create h2. In h2, I say hello, and I want to make the word what hello whom replaceable. So the same idea. I will make span tag around it, and here exclamation mark, and I put Sheridan here. Okay. But in this case, I want to make it flexible in the sense of to make it a variable. So instead of hard-coded word, I want to make it variable. So how to do it? Okay. So before doing it, I want to commit it and say, what did I do? Use it, edit CSS, right? Edit CSS, edit some other things. What? Okay. So let's commit. Major achievements so far. Edit CSS. Okay. commit. Now, I want to make this replaceable. Going back to my controller, one way to do it is to return, instead of string, is return model and view. Model is the data that you want to display. A view is this. Okay. So I want to return model and view. Model and view. Okay. I need to import this class with Alt-Enter. It imports it. Now I'm returning, calling constructor new of model and view, and put it here. If I leave it as it will work. But I didn't add data, but template doesn't want data at this moment, right? So when I stop it and run it, it should still work. Because I achieved something equivalent, right? But it is not my final goal. In my final goal, I want to, for this step, I want to display name dynamically. So I want to create some variable, user, like name, or username, let's call it username, and assign some Jane, for example, okay? In Java, you can declare a variable with var as long as you assign type immediately, assign something immediately. It will create string variable for it. Okay. So how to add it? Second parameter, it is name inside of the template. So for example, you want to call it name there. And second, one more parameter, it's data. Okay. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, because this is name of the data inside of template. But this is your variable name. Okay? Now you go inside of template and replace this part. How to do it? I go to output, and I use th text the same way to replace text, to replace text content of the tag, to replace Sheridan. But in order to insert expression, I need to use $sign and curly braces. $sign, curly braces, and this is a name variable. Okay. So again, when I click save, this is not processed, it's still Sheridan. This is not processed template. And please be careful that when you click this one, it will be just template, not processed. The same way. You see? Don't get confused with this one. In order to see result of the Java running, we need to go to localhost 8080. But before we see result, we need to save, stop it, and run. Okay. See, it's restarting. It did restart, reload, hello Jane. All right? Yes? What? In my controller, I added, this is how I call it inside of template. This is just variable. It is the data. Okay. So what did I achieve? Display the name dynamically, right? The name dynamically. Commit. All right. Next. Going back to controller. In my controller, I added only one piece of the data, but you can add more if you want. This object has a method add attribute. And so you can keep adding attributes. And attribute, it is pair. Name, value, name, value. There is another way of dealing with it, yes?
Is there a way to make those name value pairs into a dictionary and just pass them?
Yeah, it's the same way. It's a method add attributes in plural. This way you give it. There is multiple choices to do it. There is one more way to do it, so let's run it because we will use it as well. So instead of returning model and view, you can return string, but add this value to model. So you declare parameter model, type model. You import model, Alt-Enter. Model from Spring Framework UI. You imported model. You return output. So cut. But you need to add this value to model. So you use model and add attribute and paste. So this manipulation. Okay. So instead of returning model and view, you can ask for parameter model, add it, and it will still work. So it is alternative to achieve it. So let's check it, stop, run. Okay. Next, reload, works, right? So this is another way of doing it. So let's commit it. What did you use? Use it, the model parameter. Use it the model parameter. Commit. So it is alternative way. Okay. Next. Typically, object carrying data contains more than one field. And we don't need to split it into separate pieces to add it to template. We can add object to template. So let's declare class app user. So I'm going back to my Java code, and I create package called model. What is model? A model is data object that you give to template, that you want to show. So I create model package here, and I add class called app user. Okay. All right. And I press enter. App user added to Git. I misspell it, so I have to rename it. And if you misspell something and you need to rename it, you always rename it with refactor. This will keep it consistent, right? A refactor rename, and I need to get rid of extra with this all. And you see it made it consistent. It renamed it name of the file. So do not rename it brute force because it will break it. Now, let's add first name and last name to this object, to this class, and make them private. Right? So make them private and set setters and getters. So they will work as properties. Java doesn't have properties, but properties are simulated by setters and getters. So I make it private, a private string, first name. Okay. And then private string, last name. Copy. Paste private string, last name. And then let's generate constructor so we can create it. So generate constructor with two parameters that will assign it. Okay. Also, let's create constructor without parameters, so it will be empty fields. So generate constructor, select none, and OK. And this constructor will call the given one with assignment empty strings. So I'm calling constructor from the top, giving empty strings. Empty, comma, empty, semicolon. Why it is in yellow? Private field last name is assigned but never accessed because I don't have a getters, so I cannot use it, right? So I need to have a getters, and I will also need setters later. Currently, I need to have just getters, right? But I will use setters later. So let's generate both because I anticipate them in the future. I need them. So generate getter and setter for everything. I selected all, and I click OK. Now it should be happy. You see? It's happy. All right. Now, instead of passing name, let's pass user object. Okay. Are you with me? And I generated setter and getters and constructor without parameters and constructor with parameters. So I'm going back to my controller, and instead of username, I will say app user because this will be object. App, or just let's call it user. User. Calling constructor app user, new app user constructor, and let's give it some name like Bart Simpson, for example. Bart Simpson. Okay, and now we should give it some, like, okay, app user, and user. So this is just value, and this is a name inside of template. So this will be name of this object inside of template. All right. So let's edit this object so we can display it properly, because now it doesn't have this name, app user, in it. So going back to my template, where is that output? We have to deal with it at some point. Okay. So for now, it's not done yet. Right? So for now, let's display first name. How to display a field of the object? You use name, and you see you can call a getter. But you can also use shortcut. And this is not private field. This is a name derived from a get. Okay. So this part is just a shortcut. So you can do that. If you don't believe me, move mouse on top. It will tell that it's calling get first name. So it is shortcut of calling get first name. So although Java doesn't have properties, they're emulated in template. So this will be first name, but let's display first name and last name separately as well. So I will create two paragraphs, one for first name and one for last name. So I will say first name, and since I need to display it, so again, I'm doing this span trick. Span, ch, text, and let's put some space holder for first name. Harry Potter. Okay, Harry. And for text replacement, the same as above. $, app user, and first name. I will copy paste this one for the last name as well. So I do copy, paste. This will be last name, and this will be Potter. Okay. So let's do preview. In preview, it's not process, it is Harry Potter, right? So it is just space holders, right? And Sheridan is not replaced with whatever there, okay? So let's see if my controller is fine. So I added Bart Simpson, I added, yeah. So let's stop it and run it and see if it shows. It restarted. Bart Simpson, yeah, Harry Potter is replaced with Bart Simpson, right? And this is Bart. What if we want to join it? Technically, we can join stuff with plus sign, but it's better to call to make template. So let's see how to create strings using template. If you want to add pieces, you can do it with plus sign. It will work. Another way to deal with it is to use vertical lines. Vertical lines, it's a string template. Vertical line here, vertical line there. I put space in another piece like this. Copy, but this will be last name. Last name. Okay. So this is last name. So this piece is called string template. And you can type whatever in between, it will be joined. Doesn't have to be space. Okay? So let's see. I will stop it, run it. Bart Simpson, right? Hello, Bart Simpson. So it's definitely achievement. So let's commit it and say use it app user class or edit app user class. So commit. Edit app user class. Commit. Edit app user class and yes? Unfortunately, running debugger in web projects is less useful compared to other projects. The reason is that when you do debugger, it will constantly jump into libraries and from libraries, and you don't want to go through library code. So in this sense, debugging is actually easier with log messages. So for log, if you use println, it will still appear at the bottom, but it is harder to control than logger. If you use specific class, call it logger, for logging, you can turn on and turn off and change level of output. Okay? So you have finer control. You can set different levels of output per package. This way, you can control how much you want to see of your printouts. So let's learn using logger. So when you, let's open first application properties and set up level for the logger. Start typing logger, and it will give you option, not this one, logging level. Logging level, and after this, you start specifying your package, your application. If I leave it as it is, it will be my packages of this app. And I assign logger level trace. If I specify trace, it will include trace outputs. It will also include debug and error. Okay? This is kind of white. If I don't want so much, I can specify debug. It will be only debug messages and error. If I say error, it will be only error messages. So this way I can tune how much I want to see, and it is per package. So I can specify, like for controller, one level, and for model, another level. Okay? Okay. So if I say hello user, it is specific for this app, but it doesn't have to be hello user here. Okay? So it's a level how much I want to see. How to print it? You define public, you define variable here, doesn't have to be public. A private type logger, yes, let's say log. And logger factory. Type logger factory, one word with camel case. Logger factory get logger, and you specify, now you use class name, HelloUser, controller.class. Why it's unhappy? HelloUser controller.class, get logger factory.
Maybe it didn't import the right type.
Yeah, maybe I didn't import. So let's see. Logger factory is imported. What about logger? Provided class. Maybe I didn't import this one. Okay, let's try.
Well, you imported the wrong logger.
Yes.
I did.
The logging logger.
That's it. Should have been Java.
Oh yeah, it's wrong one. Yes. This is why it's happening. So let's Alt Enter and library. Sometimes it doesn't do what we want, so I just copy paste it. Okay, so I do copy, paste, and instead of logger factory, I will edit it to make it logger. Sometimes it is less smart than we expect. Okay, so these loggers supposed to be from SLF4J, and logger factory also should be from SLF4J. If it doesn't work, you have to copy paste it, essentially. Okay. So we got log, and let's print some logger messages. For example, let's do trace for first. Log trace, and the message. Yeah, trace it's say call it in output. So to trace what is going on, call it output. Okay. So let's see where it will appear. Let's run. Okay. Output is not called because browser didn't send request yet. This method will be called when browser receives when server receives request from browser. So I need to send request from browser. I reload the page, and you see, call it output. This way you can print variables, right? So if you want to print app user content, you better create toString, right? Because toString will print it nicely. We'll learn it from previous lessons. So I go to app user and generate string, generate toString, here it is. I generated toString method. Let's print it out in the controller. And in this case, I will use probably debugger. Log debug. Debug. We say hello user. App user equal to user, right? This is user. User of this variable is equal to that. So let's see how it prints. Okay, reload the page. Now, this part is trace, and you see this is trace. This output is debug, and this is debug. It shows the class that is printing it because I provided class name here to the logger. Okay? So this is the idea. You can't limit printouts if you edit this one. If I say debug, it will not print trace. So this way you can, if it is too much, you can limit it. Okay? All right? Next. So let's keep working on it. This one eradicated. Yes?
You mind going back to
App user? I generated to string. I right click it, say generate to string. Okay? Otherwise, it will print some class name just with package names. Next, let's add input page that will ask enter your name. So now I will copy paste a lot from output, like the CSS and all this stuff. Yes? Where? Application properties, yes. I type at this. Login level, this is package name. This is optional, you don't have to write it. Okay? And trace. Yes? You more specific. For example, if you want to print only from controller trace, you add controller. And it will not apply to model. You can have a line, several lines for specification. Okay? So it is just for finer control. All right? So let's create an input page. Right click, new HTML input. So add. Next, I want to write input. Now I need to copy paste a lot, right? What should I start? From output, I copy paste this piece, right? Because I want to have CSS there. I copy into input, CSS, paste, and I also need to have a th description, right? Namespace. So I copy this part, copy, and I paste it here. Paste to have definition of namespace. I will probably copy paste footer and some of the header as well, right? So I will go with header. Maybe I will copy paste entire piece, but I will edit it, right? So I will copy paste entire piece here. Content of the body. So copy, content of the body, and now I want to edit it. It is not hello. This will be enter your name, right? Enter your name. Enter your name. Instead of output, it will be input, right? So I will use input tag, input, and I name it first name. So name, first name. Okay. Let's make this label in front of input. Okay. So I will put this inside of label. Label. Label for first FN, for stand for first name, and I need to add ID first name here, FN. FN. So associate label with input. Yeah. And I want to do the same manipulation, copy with this. Paste, FN, this is LN, last name. All right. I got two inputs, but if I want to send to the server, they must be inside of a form tag. So I need to create form tag around them. Creating form tag around them. So it is form. And these inputs are going inside of the form. Okay. Form input also needs submit button. So I will create submit button with input type submit. This will create me submit button. Okay. So let's preview to see what is going on. So I edit enter your name. I also need to edit output to input, right? So it is input. Here it is. And save. Input, enter your name, first name. This should be last name, right? Last name. And this is last name. Okay. Save all. First name, last name, submit, HTML server. Okay. If I click submit, nothing happens because form is not going anywhere, right? So let's create action. And for the action, I want to say output. Okay. Let's click submit. I need to click save. Save all. Submit. It goes to output. But this is not real processing. Remember, this is preview. So this is just link from one preview to another preview. It's not actually sending data. So in order to send data, I need to create action with th. Okay. So, and I also need to have some address, call it some address where it will go. So let's create address with th, th action. And addresses inside of templates are at curly braces. So I'm using address output to send data. This address doesn't exist yet. I need to create it inside of controller to receive data. All right. So this form will send data by clicking submit button to this address. But this address does not exist yet. I need to create it. So let's go to controller. In my control, it's supposed to be here because this is output, right? Now. And my input page should be slash. First, let's show input page. So public string input method, right? Public string input method returning string. It's a name of template input, right? And this should be shown by default. So I do copy, paste this piece, and this is output. Okay? Now output is receiving input from this piece. Are you with me? Yes?
Can you go back to the input action in the form?
th action at address is inside of template. I start with at curly brace. So it is the same approach. This is just for preview. So you can go from one preview to another preview. But this is actual. Okay. What happens here is already processed template. If you do page view source, you see this is already processed. Okay. So it doesn't have that space. All right, so let's go to control and make sure that it is what we want. Okay, let's add log for log trace. Copy, paste, and say call it input, right? Call it input. So let's see what is going on. Stop, run. Start it. By default, it should show input page now. This one, input page. See, by default. When I click submit, it goes to output, which is correct. But definitely it shows Bart Simpson because first of all, I didn't send anything. Second, I didn't receive anything, right? So I have two issues. I do not send any, I'm not receiving, right? But this is, you see it goes first name equal and last name equal. Form sends data as request parameters. So this is request parameter. Request parameter. If we send it by post, it won't be shown on the address line, it will be hidden. But this is the default way of doing it, it's sent by get. So let's receive it. So this is output, so let's receive it. String, first name. First name. Okay. And next line, string last name. Okay. I created variables, but I'm missing something. I didn't tell that it is request parameter. So I need to tell the system that it is a request parameter. See, request param. If name of the variable is equal to name of input, it will pick it. Okay. So request param, copy, paste, request param. All right? Now let's see. Going back to input page, let's put Jane, Weasley, submit, Bart Simpson. Okay? Why it's not working? Because it is still Bart Simpson, right? So let's do first name here, last name here. Last name here. So let's stop it. Run. Going back. Submit. Jen Weasley. So I did receive it, right? All right. So what did we do? Created input page. So let's commit. Made the input page. Made the input page. And what will happen if I send it empty? Empty, right? So there's no validation, right? So let's add validation. First thing that we need to change is to receive it as one object, and not two separate pieces, because in order to use validation, it has to be combined in some object. Okay. So how to combine this into some object? Surprisingly easy. So instead of using two fields, you create one. For the type, app user, and I call it user. So delete these things, say call it app user, and call it user. But you need to let it know that it is in the request, right? So it is request, you put it request, but it is not request param, because request param is just one field. It is request, no, second. model attribute. It is model attribute. This will tell the system, collect the data from the request and call constructor and call setters. It is model attribute. Delete this piece because it's already here. Right? Yes?
What's the difference between log.trace and log.debug?
No difference. It's only trace and debug. You can limit how much you print by limiting do not print trace, for example. Okay. So here it is, and let's stop it and run it and see that it still works. It does work, right? So what did it do? It called default constructor without parameters and call it setters, provided the name of the fields match the name of the setters. It has to be, otherwise how would it know, right? So what did we do? We definitely achieved something. We received data as one object, right? So let's do commit, receive with the data as one object. Okay, but it's not validating yet, obviously.
Sorry, did you change the output or the form, I mean, to do that?
No.
So just that function?
Yeah, I just receive it as one object, and now it is output the same. It is just variable is here created. I remove its creation variable here. Okay. So commit, receive data as one object. Now we need to provide validation instruction, but otherwise how would it know how to validate? Validation instructions are provided inside of the object itself. There are multiple ways to provide it, like by links, by patterns. I use the simplest, not blank. Not blank means type something. Space doesn't work. Space is blank, right? So not blank. Not blank for first name and not blank for last name. This is simple as possible, right? Not blank. Next, if you leave it as it is, it will use default message. It will say not blank failed, blah, 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 not what you want. So we need to add file with the error messages, validation messages. Name of it is messages.properties. So inside of resources, you create new file, call it messages.properties. 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 Now you need to assign message to every constraint. A naming convention, constraint name, not blank. Next, a name of bean. A name of bean is user that we receive it. It is user. Hopefully I'm right. I forgot. Okay, let's try. User, and next name of the fields that we validate, first name, and message. First name is missing. Missing first name. Missing first name. So I copy paste to create it for the last name. Copy, paste, last name, missing last name. Am I right? You know, it's better to use the same name at this moment. So let's go back to controller and change it to app user. Not user, app user. Change this to app user. Because when we print messages, we'll have to refer to this name. Change it to app user and stick to the same now. App user, and this is app user. I remember from previous experience, now it is better to use the same. Because you will display error messages by referring to this name inside of template. App user here, you change this here. Right, okay. Now you go to properties and change this, not messages properties, change this to app user. App user and app user. Okay. Next, how to check that it is valid or not valid. Going back to controller. In order to call validator, we add validated in front of it. Validated. This will make it validated. How to check error messages. Next parameter is binding result. It has to be immediately after this object. Binding result. So this parameter has to be declared immediately after it. Right? So next, how to check if binding result has errors. Binding result has errors. I want to show different template, the one that says error message, errors inside of input. So I will call this template retry, copy, paste, retry, or yes, retry. It doesn't exist yet. But in order to display this stuff, I need to add it to the model before. Otherwise, I will not be able to show data inside of that template. Okay? So if there are errors, show retry. Okay? Otherwise, show output. So retry should be similar to input because it's retry, it expects stuff to print it again, right? So I copy input and paste it again with different name. Paste, and now I call it retry. So I copied input, and when I paste it, it's asked name, I type retry. So it's no new name. Okay, paste. Retry, add, I got retry. Now let's rename it. So instead of input, at the top it will be retry. Okay. And inside of the form, I will create H3 and I will call it input errors. And maybe I will make it in red color. Remember that I created class, name it error. But there is no error messages yet because I didn't put space holders for them at this moment. Okay? So far I just copy pasted input and I rename it retry. Okay. It's still quite close. All right, so let's run it and see what happens. Going back to input, I missed this field and I just print Jane. Okay. Press submit, input errors, and what is wrong? First, there is no errors, right? Jane disappeared, which is bad. It should not force me to re-enter things that was valid, that was there. Right? So I need to deal with this issue. I need to put Jane, I need to keep previous inputs when I show errors. So let's fix that issue. So I'm going to retry, and in order to do so, I need to bind that object to this form. So going here, I'm binding that object to the form. th object and $, and how we call it, user, app user, right? App user. I bound this object here, and I also need to bind it to an input. So this should be first name of the object, right? How to do it? In order to do that, I have to use th field and put star sign in front of it. And this will make it first name from this object, app user. Okay. I do the same manipulation for last name. Instead of name, it is th field. Instead of last name, it is star. Okay. So this will insert previous input inside of the form, so I don't have to re-enter it. Okay? So let's see. So I added th object to the form tag. See. So it is closed right here. Okay. All right. So let's see. Going back to input. No. I didn't click run. This is why. Reload. Let's type Jane. Submit. Input errors. You see it keeps Jane, which is what I want. Okay. Let's put Weasley. Hello, Jane Weasley, right? What is missing? Error messages. Last step, error messages. So at the top of the form, we need to put error messages after input errors. Let's put it as a list. So I put unordered list and list items, repeated in the loop. So I put some space holder, call it message here. I will also create class arrow here. And this will be repeated how many? Because it could be 1, could be 2. So I use loop, and this is called th each. Th each. Okay. Th each, and how it works. First parameter, it is loop variable. Okay. So let's call it e. Our second parameter, it is list, something iteratable. So I need to pick it from the system. So I need to follow naming convention. So $, like this. Next, pound fields, dot arrows. And I want to print all arrows, because this I can limit arrows per field. And all, it means, sorry, in all I put star. Sorry, this. Like that. What did I miss? Fields, arrows. I mean, I misbalanced something. Sorry, it is quote inside of quote, so I have to use single quote. Because it's quote inside of quote. I can't use the same quotes. This means all fields.
Having issues with the field names for the input.
ch field, like here.
Yeah, for both of those, it says it can't resolve the variable name.
Ch or this?
Oh, those ones, yeah. At the bottom, the last name and the first name.
Did you add this piece? th object app user.
Yes.
And do you have this piece on top?
Wait, it can't resolve the app user either.
Do you have this thing?
Yeah.
Sometimes it shows underlined, but it's actually working. Check if it is working. Sometimes it freaks out. This happens. Run it and see if it is working. Maybe it is false alarm. Sometimes templates are not misunderstood by.
I might have missed something in the controller.
You need to move it up to top before if. So this piece will include it here and there. So it will go into retry as well.
I forgot to rename the attribute there.
I rename it to the same app user. Yeah. So at this moment, it's better to have the same because we refer to error messages inside of the template. So it should know it as template. Right? Otherwise, we need to provide extra information. I remember this from previous years. So it's running. Now let's go back to input, leaving Jane, message, it's not printed. Because I missed something, let's go back to input. What I miss, I repeat this, but I didn't replace message. In order to replace message, I have to use th text, right? In order to replace text content of the tag, we use th text. This will run the loop one arrow at a time, replacing this word message. Because currently I got just word message, not replace it. So let's try stop, run. Restart it, going back. Missing last name, space is missing. That is easy to fix. Space, space, right? I rush it and so I missed spaces. Okay. Stop. Obviously, it should be space in between. Run. Okay. Going back. Missing last name. Let's remove both. Missing last name, missing first name. So Weasley is here. Missing first name, right? Jane Weasley. Hello, Jane Weasley. Going back, let's put all of them to input. Jane Weasley. Hello, Jane Weasley. Okay. So what did we do? Added the validation, right? Added the validation. So edit the validation. It shows some warnings, but most likely it is not important. Let's see. App user, constructor is never used. Okay. This unused import statement. We can delete this. What is field log? Maybe final. Okay, could be. So it's not serious. Ignore. All right. Questions?
Could you go back to the retry HTML?
In order to display previous inputs, I added object and I bound those fields to form. So it will pick it and insert it into the form. And I added loop for arrows. Arrows must be displayed only inside of the form. If you move it outside, it will crash, because arrows are not available outside of the form. Yes?
Is there a way to redirect the request? As in, like, because having the whole template just for a retry page seems kind of redundant.
You can combine input with retry.
Right?
You can combine input with retry. I just avoid this complexity at this moment. It can be the same page, the same template.
Can you show the input and HTML again, please? The input. I think I'm missing something.
What?
Or can you show the input HTML?
Uh-huh. It can be the same template. Yeah. I just avoided this. What? Yes, I will. I will upload it. When I upload it, I will create branches per step. So we can switch between this step 1, step 2, and step 3. So what I will do, I will add branches for every step, like made controller walk, a new branch, and I will call it step 1, and not checkout, so it will create step 1. It will be easy to switch to step 1, step 2 this way. Added CSS, it was a new branch, step 2, so it will be switchable this way. Step 1, step 2. So I will repeat it till end, and I will push it to GitHub, and I will provide link on Slate. Okay. Questions? When I display messages this way, messages are displayed on top with a loop. It is possible to display specifically next to the field as well, or in both. I avoided this, not everything at once. How to do it? It's actually reasonably straightforward. When I displayed arrows in the template, here where it is, I use it star. But if you use actual field name, it will be one arrow for that. So it could be done this way as well. Okay, questions?